Lecture 1, What Makes Visual Communication Work? So in our first lecture today, we're going to be exploring why visual communication matters. And so whether you realize it or not, you're doing design every time you write an email, make a slide, or share a graphic. And good visual communication makes your ideas clearer, easier to understand, and importantly, far more persuasive. And so when design works, people aren't even necessarily aware of it. They just completely understand your message as intended. So first, to start off with our learning objectives for this lecture, we're going to look at defining some core design principles and then start to go into recognizing effective and ineffective visual communication. So why visual communication matters. Visuals, they're important. Humans process visual information almost instantly. We notice color, we notice shape, we notice layout before we're reading a single word. And so, because of this, the design becomes the first impression of your message. So, in particular, when you're trying to persuade people of somebody or something or teach them something, the way that you're presenting it with your visuals really, really does matter. If your slides or your graphics are cluttered or uneven or chaotic, people will subconsciously assume that the actual content that's being presented is disorganized or just not worth their time. So if your visuals look clean and intentional, audiences are going to be more likely to trust you, more likely to kind of tune in and actually listen to what you're saying. Strong design also reduces cognitive load. And so that's basically, it means that your audience doesn't have to work as hard to try to understand what you're saying. Visual communication is about removing friction so that your message comes across really clearly. So we have a couple kind of principles of design, and they're tools that help us ensure that we have these really strong images. So we have contrast, which is differences in color and shape, size to make important information stand out and to improve the overall readability. We have alignment, which creates order and professionalism by consistently aligning elements on your slides. And so this just makes it all look a little bit more connected, better organized, intentional. We have proximity, which is where you're grouping related items together visually to communicate that they belong to the same concept or the same idea. So like in the side, you can see that we have the box and then we have the 4 elements within it. And so that shows that they're all the 4 principles of design. They're grouped together. Then we have hierarchy. And so that's the structure of your content that will kind of guide the viewer's eye. So you have the most important kind of taking a really central position, going to the least important. That'll be a little bit more on the peripheral. And then another thing that we have is balance and white space. And so white space isn't empty, right? It's strategic. It directs your attention. It gives some kind of grounding to your layout, gives the viewer room to breathe, right? You don't want the whole slide to be taken up with information that the person has to be taking in the 30 seconds that you're showing them a slide. And then balance is about creating a visual equilibrium. Again, so a slide crammed with text on one side and nothing on the other feels off. Too many decorative elements make your content feel heavy or unfocused. And minimalism isn't a bad thing necessarily, right? So we have these tools, these programs like Canva, where you get a lot of stuff that you can include. And there's that kind of just inherent desire to use it all because it's pretty. We don't necessarily need to do that. So minimalism, it has its purpose, it has its place. So you can see on this slide here, this looks crazy, right? If you were in a presentation and somebody did this slide, you'd just be like, what is going on there? Like, is that person okay? So it's all down at the bottom. You have tons of white space here. It's just strange. So think about how your slides would present to somebody else. And I mentioned cognitive load earlier, but it's really important to understand this. So our brains have limited bandwidth. We can only do so much. And so when a slide contains 10 bullet points, 4 different fonts, multiple unrelated images, people stop processing the content and they start trying to basically crack the code of what you're presenting here. It's the visual clutter. It creates really, really high cognitive load. So right now, I'm assuming that you're all like, why are all these images here? Why did she do that? This is supposed to be a presentation on good communication, good visual communication skills. This doesn't look good, right? It's distracting. It's pretty. It's very pretty, but it's very distracting. And so a good design reduces cognitive load by simplifying the layout, grouping the content, using consistent styles, removing anything that doesn't serve the message. And so a lot on this slide could be seen to not be serving the message, right? You want your audience to be thinking about your ideas, the actual content of what you're presenting, not how it's looking, not the visual so much. And so we also want to talk about accessible design. Accessibility makes your work clearer and more usable for everyone. Many accessibility practices like high contrast, clean fonts, simple structure, they all benefit everybody, not just those who might have disabilities with vision or hearing. Any human interacting with it should benefit from accessible design. And so this includes ensuring that you have readable fonts, you have strong color contrast, you have limited decorative fonts, clear headings and structure, alternative text for your images. And so we're going to go into detail throughout this class about how to ensure that you're doing all of this. And this accessibility is essential. It's not optional. So your key takeaways from the first lecture here are that visual communication is an opportunity. You can support, but not replace. So you're going to still have text. You're not going to be able to make everything into some kind of like hieroglyphic code. You still need words, but you can kind of be creative with it. Principles of design, they should guide all of your choices, along with accessibility concerns. You need to be aware of these, how your information is going to be coming across to your audience.